Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowles. I've got Joe Mead with me again, and Joe, we're getting into the weeds here with a little bit of specifics, but DeMond Williams and Washington there's a little bit of a situation there. Now we're going to take the viewers through the timeline here. It is evolving. In fact, there was another update like minutes before we clicked record here, Joe, but let's bring it back to about a week ago now. DeMond Williams signed a deal to stay at Washington next year. Um, don't know exactly what that deal was, but he signed something. Fast forward a couple days forward, he is informing Washington that he wants to enter the transfer portal. Washington says, hold on now, you signed something for next year. It appears that another team, most likely the team in Baton Rouge, came in with a significantly larger NIL offer. DeMond Williams tried to, take it, and then Washington said, we're going to pursue this legally. It's been kind of messy until Pete Thamel tweeted minutes ago that DeMond Williams is now leaning towards staying at Washington, which he may not have a choice. He may have to do that. So obviously there's been a couple of updates here, but what are sort of your overarching thoughts on this whole situation?
It's funny, Sean, because each individual event or, let's say, player in this portal is affected by another. So you kind of wonder, you know, if it's the school in question in Baton Rouge, if it's Miami, if it's Tennessee, you know, who else were they looking at? What else, like, kind of moved, let's call it move pieces around this musical chairs game, right? I do think the Levitt visit is the most interesting part of this saga. Now, this is all speculative until we hear something from a Kiffin or a Levitt, and probably you're more likely to hear from Kiffin because he's let's call it not afraid of the spotlight, to put it bluntly. So I truly wonder what effect some other event had on this. Like, was it Levitt? Was it the fact Levitt was going to visit Tennessee and he liked his visit? I really couldn't tell you. Um, my biggest reaction to this, though, Sean, personally, aside from just the college football fan in me, is this is so weird because we thought Devon Williams was the future at Washington since 2024. And the fact this is even a thought is kind of shocking, especially if the $3 to $4 million per year amount is true.
And the whole musical chairs thing with the quarterbacks is probably like the contributing factor to this. We had the Nebraska Kentucky situation where Notre Dame quarterback Kenny Minchey was committed to Nebraska. It doesn't appear that he signed anything there. Now that could be wrong, but that's what it seems like. He is now committed to Kentucky. It was heavily rumored that Sam Levitt was going to go to Kentucky. Now, of course, Sam Levitt can't go there because Minchie did, and now Levitt's taking these other visits, one of them including to LSU. After Kentucky was filled, it looked like Levitt was going to be the next LSU quarterback. Now you throw this DeMond Williams wrinkle into things, and it's just very odd. And it seems like he may have been scared off by some legal problems here, but, I don't know if we've seen this exactly yet. I think we've had some people commit somewhere and then go somewhere else, but the whole signing thing is what is like you can commit somewhere. High schoolers verbally commit somewhere, decommit, go somewhere else. I don't think there's a real problem with that. Now, you should probably consider everything before you do that, but the signing here is really important. We thought Washington was kind of set here, Joe. When we did our State of the Program video, we weren't even sure if Jedd Fisch was going to... We were more sure that DeMond Williams was going to be there than Jedd Fisch. And, of course, Fisch, ends up not going to Michigan. And Williams signs. We're like, all right, that's kind of done with now. Like, coaches have got to move on in this quick transfer portal. Like, hundreds of people committed in the last week, and it's been open for 7 days. So it throws a wrinkle into things when somebody you thought who was off the board is now on the board again. But there's a chance that this just fizzles out, Joe, and Williams goes back to Washington. But from a locker room perspective, the other players on Washington, this was going to be their guy next year. It's very evident he tried to leave, and now he's coming back. There has to be some damage there in the Washington locker room.
I mean, obviously, Sean and I have never played collegiate football, especially a sport at that high a level. What I'll say is the funeral aspect, I really don't want to comment too much on that because I don't know what all went on, and I think that'd be disingenuous to have any indication of what was going through people's minds, what was really going on, who really tweeted it or whatever. It's more so the reaction to it. You know, you kind of have the fan base turn on him. You have other student athletes tweet out. Jed Fish's wife too. That is insane. Like that's nothing I've ever seen.
Like from Washington's point of view, they have obviously invested a whole lot of money. They have probably stopped contacting these quarterbacks because they had them, and then they may have thrown some offers to some other people that was with this money that they would have to pay him, and it is truly a really messy situation for all of the Washington like coaching staff. You have this guy, then you don't, then it looks like you might have him again. But if he's coming back there wanting to play somewhere else, that's not the best situation for anybody involved. So I think we'd be lying if it said it didn't matter. Like though every single player who suits up for Washington next year is going to know that he tried to go somewhere else. And I know people enter the transfer portal and then end up coming back to their school, but I think this is a little bit different than that because he signed and tried to leave. But there is one school, Joe, that needs a quarterback next year because they're still playing. They have a silent commit from somebody, but potentially they were a player in this too. But where do you think this Damon Williams situation goes from here? Do you think he's able to smooth it over? Is he still able to be, the potential superstar that he can be, or do you think that this will have some lasting effects?
Know about his play on the field. I think the problem is with college football, Washington doesn't play their next game till what, like a little under 8 months from now. This is going to be a prevailing storyline, unfortunately, especially into spring ball. Another thing I'll comment on is it's really hard to rescind certain comments. I'm sure you could always talk that up and say, oh, I was over emotional or whatever, but the comments were still said. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that does in the locker room, what that does for the fan base. And let's face it, this is a fan base that's been spurned before. Not that Kalen DeBoer was dishonest leaving, but Washington fans, and rightfully so, they're a historic program. They're one of the great powers in the Pacific Northwest. They were spurned just under 2 years ago by Kalen DeBoer, who went to Alabama. That's a guy they thought could get it rolling the way Chris Peterson did, and even more so than Chris Peterson. And then you have this happen too. I think it's a fan base that's very tired of just instability. And then, the way this went down, I'm sure Damon Williams will tell you he wasn't a fan of how it went down either. So just to have all that happen, certainly I understand where the fan base is coming from if they feel a certain way.
And it's going to be up to him to earn their trust back. Now, if they start the season 5-0 and he's slinging it all over the place and running for 100 yards a game, I think they're going to forget.
Yeah.
But that's a long way out. Like you said, they're probably the worst time to. I mean, he can probably lay low, and some people will forget. The donors won't forget, and he's still going to end up getting his money probably. But this is something that probably should not have happened from his point of view. Like he signed a deal which, if the numbers that are rumored are correct, is pretty fair for him. He's a great quarterback. He's probably not going to be the first pick in the NFL draft, but he could be a first rounder with a great season. So I hope he regrets a few of the things that happened here. I'm sure Washington fans probably regret some of the things that they said, about him when it appeared that he was leaving. But at this point, it looks like he's going to be back at Washington, as we all thought all along. So.
Yeah, and one last thing, when we say him, that's also a reference to his camp too. I doubt
yeah,
all these numbers and stuff are being thrown around. I know the agent drops him and whatever, and him and Jed Fish share the same agent. But one thing I'll say is, was this a family member? Was this a friend? Was it, someone who
It was
That's an
someone.
unofficial title. It was someone. I don't think it was just Demond alone. Let's just make
No,
that very clear.
and this is not plenty of kids, whether basketball or football or across college sports. Some of them are not getting good advice. It's not our opinion to judge, but some of them are. Like some of them are making, some of them are transferring out of good decisions, out of good situations into worse, and
Right.
potentially that could have happened here. But it appears that Demond Williams will be Washington's quarterback next year. If he's not, Joe, there'll be another video. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah. And there'll
Um,
be a whole bunch of Twitter posts too.
yep. So that is all we have for you today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.